What's the story, Morning Glory? Hi, friends, it's Maria here. Today, I thought we'd go over a sort of story or thought experiment that could help draw out further discussion on human rights. A lot of times, I think people think of human rights as this vague, nebulous idea, but it's more concrete than that. So today, we're going to hear about the life of Dan. Dan's mom finds out she's pregnant at just 19. She's about 8 weeks from her last menstrual period, and little Danny is just 6 weeks old since his conception date. His heart has been beating for 3 weeks. His eyes, ears, mouth, kidney, and liver are present and growing rapidly, and his first brainwaves are now recordable. Dan's mom is quite poor, though. She doesn't want to be pregnant, so she heads to an abortion clinic with plans to end Danny's life. However, a sidewalk counselor is there and is able to reach out to Danny's mom and have a good conversation with her about the local resources that can help. They talk about the dignity of the preborn, and Danny's mom chooses life. She decides to parent him as well. He's born 32 weeks later, happy, healthy, and whole. However, despite all the resources that exist to help Danny and his mom after birth, they still end up living in relative poverty. Danny's mom must work 2 jobs to make ends meet, and Danny struggles in school, both academically and behaviorally. He's a latchkey kid, and he falls in with the wrong crowd. His mom is doing her best, but she just doesn't have enough time in the day to work to put food on the table and help Danny with schoolwork. At 14, he's initiated into a gang. At 19, Dan is caught up in a gang war, and he premeditates getting into a fight to intentionally kill his gang's leaders to usurp power. He kills 3 opposing gang members in the fight. Dan is now facing charges of first-degree murder as an adult. He's convicted and sentenced to capital punishment. He's put on death row, and he's facing his execution after multiple attempts at judicial appeals. The same woman who was outside the abortion clinic to save his life that day 20-something years ago is now pushing for greater use of the death penalty in their state. She believes the justice system needs to represent a balance of harms and believes Dan should be put to death. The actions of the sidewalk counselor seem inconsistent, don't they? Conversely, Dan's mom had a friend who was pushing her to get an abortion back those same 20-something years ago. This friend argued all the typical pro-choice talking points, that it was her body, her choice, the child would grow up in poverty, and that it would be an awful life, but as we know, Danny's mom chose life. Then, when Dan was convicted and put on death row, this same friend was doing everything in her power to save Dan's life. It didn't matter that he was guilty, she opposed the death penalty and needed to save his life. Aren't these actions inconsistent too? The question I want to get at here is, do we love the human beings behind the human rights, or do we just love the idea of human rights? I'm sure you've all had a friend, probably back when you were in high school, who dated around. They had lots of romantic relationships, yet they didn't seem to actually care about their various significant others. This person, you might say, loved the idea of being in love, but didn't actually love the people that they were with. The idea here is similar. The sidewalk counselor loved the idea of human rights when she fought for Danny's life when he was only a 6-week-old fetus. But then she fought for Dan's death 20-something years later when he faced the death penalty. She didn't actually love Dan. Dan's mother's friend just loved the idea of human rights when she did everything in her power to save Dan's life while he was on death row. But she was pushing Danny's mother to kill him while he was still in the womb. She didn't actually love Dan. To truly love the human being behind the human rights, to love Dan, would be to have supported and protected his life in all stages, in all circumstances. While he was in the womb, while he was in his youth, while he was facing violence on the streets as a youth, and while he was on death row. If we love someone, we can only desire their good. We could not wish them harm. If we love someone, we can no more ask that they die by lethal injection by potassium chloride, in the womb or on death row. So here's my question to you. Do you just love the idea of human rights, or do you actually love the humans behind those rights?